Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Jaya Girivaradhari Jaya Girivaradhari Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Jaya Girivaradhari Jaya Girivaradhari Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Jaya Girivaradhari Jaya Jaya Yashodanandana Jaya Brajajanaranjana Jaya Yashodanandana Jaya Brajajanaranjana Jaya Brajajanaranjana Jaya Yamunatirapanachari Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Kunja Bihari 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 Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vatsadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare Hare Rama Hare Rama Rama Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Jaya Prabhupada Nitai Gaura Haribo Haribo Nitai Gaura Haribo Shri Radharanath ki, Shri Dheeraj Govardhan Hare ki, Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu ki, Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Shri Prabhupada ki, Shri Shintai Govindanandi. Hare Krishna, everyone. Thank you for joining us this morning and for this service. We're discussing a verse from Canto 4. This is chapter 19, which is titled King Prithu's 100 Horse Sacrifices, and we'll be discussing text 11. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Charamenashvamedhena Yajamane Yajushpatim Vainye Yagya Pashung Spardhan Apovaha Tirohitaha. The translation is, when Prithu Maharaj was performing the last horse sacrifice, Ashwamedha Yagya, King Indra, invisible to everyone, stole the horse intended for sacrifice. He did this because of his great envy of King Prithu. Okay. So you can read word by word. Charamena Ashwamedhena Yajamane Yajushpatim Vainye Yagyapashum Spardhan Apovaha Tirohitaha Charamena Shvamedhena Yajamane Yajushpatim Vainye Yagyapashum Spardhan Apovaha Tirohitaha Charamena Shvamedhena Yajamane Yajushpatim Vainye Yagyapashum Spardhan Apovaha Tirohitaha. Anyone like to read? Charamena Shvamedena Yajamane Yajushpatim Vainye Yagyapashum Spardhan Apovaha Tirohitaha Charamena Shvamedhena Yajamane Yajushpatim Vainye Yagyapashum Spardhan Apovaha Tirohitaha. Okay, so we read the word by word transliteration. Charamena, by the last one. Ashvamedhena, by the Ashvamedha sacrifice. Yajamane, when he was performing the sacrifice. Yajupatim, for satisfaction of the Lord of Yagya, Vishnu. Vainye, the son of King Vena. Yagya Pashum, the animal meant to be sacrificed in the Yagya. Spardhan, being envious. Apovaha, stole. Tirohitaha, being invisible. Can you repeat the translation after me? When Prithu Maharaj was performing the last horse sacrifice, Ashvamedha Yagya, King Indra, invisible to everyone, stole the horse intended for sacrifice. He did this because of his great envy of King Prithu. So the translation and this purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki. Purport. King Indra is known as Shatakratu, which indicates that he has performed 100 horse sacrifices, Ashvamedha Yagya. We should know, however, that the animals sacrificed in the Yagya were not killed. If the Vedic mantras were properly pronounced during the sacrifice, the animal sacrifice would come out again with a new life. That is the test for a successful Yagya. When King Prithu was performing 100 Yagyas, Indra became very envious because he did not want anyone to excel him. Being an ordinary living entity, he became envious of King Prithu, and making himself invisible, he stole the horse and thus impeded the Yagya performance. Om Jnanatimirandasya Gnanagana Shalakaya Chakshuranmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pristaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharine Nirvishesha Shunivari Paschati Deshadarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasani Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Manchaka Patarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. So I also pray for all your blessings to do justice to this class today, so that we can appreciate the teachings of Srimad Bhagavatam in this verse in particular that we're discussing. This verse is coming in context of Maharaj Prithu's activities after he disciplined the earth, and the earth yielded all her bounty. So Maharaj Prithu is utilizing all the facilities, the resources that the earth has now made available in sacrifice, right? Because we read previously that sacrifice is necessary. Krishna says we should never give up charity, sacrifice, and penance. And for everyone who is engaged in activities of this world, Varnashram Dharma, one should be engaged in sacrifice along with that. So Maharaj Prithu is setting the example of the ideal administrator, and therefore he is performing sacrifices that are suitable or necessary for an administrator. So this sacrifice, known as the Ashwamedha Yagya, it's not an ordinary fire sacrifice, if we could say fire sacrifices are ordinary. It's quite an elaborate procedure, and the events that lead up to it are quite extraordinary, we could say. Because the Ashwamedha Yagya, it has many purposes. We'll actually go into some of them. But in particular, the Yagya is meant to establish the sovereignty of a king across all other kingdoms. Basically, in regards to King Prithu, over the earth, because Maharaj Prithu was actually appointed emperor, and he was ruling the entire earth. So the procedure of this yagya is that what is called a challenge horse, because this word Ashwamedha, Ashwa actually refers to the word horse. So this horse and made as sacrifice. So this horse is sent out by the ruler of a kingdom, and it should actually wander without any obstruction across the lands that it desires to, and wherever that horse, whichever kingdom that horse wanders into, the ruler of that kingdom has a choice. Either they accept the rulership of the or the overlordship, we could say, of the king who sent the horse, or they can challenge it. So what should happen is that along with the horse, there's an army. The king who sent the horse sends an army, and it's often or usually led by his own family. Like we remember with Maharaj Yudhishthir, his challenge horse was led by Arjuna. Arjuna led the army that accompanied this horse. So if it wanders into a kingdom and that king doesn't accept the sender of the horse as his superior, then there's a fight, there's a battle. And what's necessary for this horse sacrifice to proceed is that the army that's accompanying the horse, they must defeat the army of the challenger, the one whose kingdom that the horse has wandered into and who has not accepted the sender of the horse as their overlord. So like that, the horse actually wanders for a period of a year. The significance is explained in a scripture called the Shatapatha Brahmana. So the Brahmanas are actually, we could say, an appendage to the Vedas. So there's 4 Vedas, Rig, Sama, Yajur, and Atharva. And each one has an accompanying scripture, or three scriptures, 3 or 4 scriptures, that elaborate on topics from that Veda. So there's an Aranyaka, there's a Samhita, and there's a Brahmana, 3 scriptures for each Veda. And the Brahmana, not the same as the person Brahmana. The scripture Brahmana is meant to elaborate on rituals from that corresponding Veda, to give more details about it, when that ritual is actually conducted, what circumstances it's conducted. So the Shatapatha Brahmana scripture explains more about an Ashvamedha Yagya and what circumstances this is carried out for, and the symbolism of it. So the symbolism of the horse is that the king, or any king who wants to establish himself above all other kings, that he's basically representing the king of all luminaries in this universe, the sun. The sun has often been used as a motif across many different ancient cultures to represent a king. So in the same way, this horse will wander over the earth, going into different kingdoms, over a period of a year, as the sun travels across the earth in a year. And as we said, wherever this horse goes, whichever kingdom it wanders into, there must be either acceptance of the horse, and that means acceptance of the king who sent it, or there's rejection, in which case there's a battle. So there's quite great implications for this sacrifice. Basically, when this horse returns, and when it is therefore received by the king successfully, it means that he is King of Kings. He's the emperor. That's the actual meaning of this Ashvamedha sacrifice. Once this king has established his rulership over all other kings, then he must perform the sacrifice, which involves this horse now, in order to establish himself and to offer back, we could say as well, in gratitude for his position. So in the same way, Maharaj Prithu was performing these sacrifices, but he didn't just perform one, he performed 100. Well, he's performing the 100th sacrifice at this point. So we can imagine how much energy and time and effort goes into one of these sacrifices. This horse wandering, the battles that may be fought, all the resources that are needed then when the horse returns to conduct the sacrifice. And we discussed in previous classes that there's mountains of gold that's needed, so many costly ingredients, and so much charity that's given away. So it's quite an effort. So a king's prestige increases with every sacrifice he does. We remember as well that Maharaj Yudhishthira performed 3 under Krishna's guidance. Lord Ramachandra also performed a horse sacrifice, at least one. I must double check that. But they also had another reason for performing it, or other reasons for performing it. Maharaj Yudhishthira was very affected by the fact that he felt himself responsible for so many deaths. So many millions of soldiers were killed. And even though he was not the cause of the battle, because it was fought over the Duryodhana and his family's their greed for the throne, but still, because he was the eventual recipient of the spoils of war, he felt that he was responsible. And no matter how much Krishna tried to assure him that he wasn't, still he had this great guilt that he was carrying. So he underwent these 3 sacrifices in order to purify himself of that sin. And in the same way, Lord Ramachandra, he didn't do anything wrong in killing Ravan, but Ravan is technically from a Brahmana family. Ravana's father was a Brahmana. So Lord Ramachandra considered that he had committed a sin in killing Ravan, and so he performed the Ashwamedha Yagya as well in order to atone for this sin. So this Yagya has some other benefits for these kings. So, of course, we emphasize that the Lord didn't actually commit any sin in killing Ravan, as much as he also didn't commit any sins in engaging in the battle of Kurukshetra. But the Lord is always setting an example in the same way as his empowered representative, Maharaj Prithu, is also setting an example as a king. He doesn't have to establish his fame through this Ashwamedha Yagya. He's already done some very extraordinary things up till now. He's tamed the earth. He's rescued the entire planet from famine. He has leveled the earth, right, himself, something that is usually carried out by King Indra. Shri Shri Radha Radhanath ki, Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu ki, Shri Giraj Govardhan Hari ki, Srila Prabhupada ki. So already Maharaj Prithu has performed so many wondrous acts, but again, setting his particular task or his particular role. We said that all of the Lord's incarnations have a mission that they come to fulfill, is demonstrating the ideal administration. And in that regard, sacrifice is very important. Right? All kings, actually even up to a few hundred years ago, were actually performing these yagyas and sacrifices. Maharaj Prithu has successfully performed 99. Now on his 100th yagya, King Indra has stolen the horse. So I think we've also discussed in the previous verse about how Indra is actually burning with envy, because he was known as the performer of 100 horse sacrifices, and he doesn't want King Prithu to take that title from him. So this is a very important point to note, that even though the Devatas, we have so much respect for them, but they're also situated within the material energy, despite how elevated they are. So they also suffer from these lower qualities. They suffer from pride, they suffer from envy, they suffer from anger. And this is because, as much as they are situated mostly in goodness, as long as that is the material mode of goodness, they will always be at risk of falling into passion and ignorance. Because anyone who is situated within the material modes is always subject to the competition of the modes. We read about this in Bhagavad Gita, that the modes are always trying to influence a person. So you're not safe if you're situated in the mode of goodness. In this material world, we often think that ordinary morality is the highest stage that anyone can achieve. Especially doing good for others, lending a helping hand, being, of benefit to society. All of these things are actually thought of in a very high regard. And it's often that it almost feels like if you're a spiritual person, you're not really considered to be doing your best unless you're engaged in some humanitarian effort as well. Like it's not enough to be involved only in spiritual study or only in devotional service to the Lord. And society likes these humanitarian acts, without realizing that it's not the supreme good you can do for others, and nor is it the supreme position that you can be in yourself. You will always be at risk of falling into the lower qualities. And we have to aim for higher. We have to aim for transcendental goodness. That's the only time that we will be able to overcome qualities like envy and anger and pride, because it gets the devatas into trouble. And it gets them into trouble just as much as we get into trouble for it. And we remember that under the influence of these qualities, Brahma committed offenses to Krishna. Indra has committed offenses to Prithu Maharaj and to Krishna. Many of the devatas fell, like the sons of Nalakuvara and sons of Kuvera, Nalakuvara, Manigriva, like that. Lord Shiva became bewildered. So it's imperative to be engaged in transcendental practices to achieve a transcendental level. Right? Mere goodness is not enough. So Indra, despite performing, it's also an important point that despite performing 100 sacrifices, right, very highly acclaimed sacrifices that are mentioned in the Vedas and extolled, right, he still hasn't developed the quality of infallibility. He still falls into illusion. Only Krishna is infallible, Achyuta. Only he never falls into illusion, never becomes bewildered by all of these, by these qualities. And anyone who is situated on the same level as Achyuta, any devotee who attains to that transcendental nature, they don't fall into these qualities as well. So even though Indra has done so many sacrifices and there's so many different methods of becoming very highly situated in the material world, right? Yoga and jnana and so on, no one can ever become Achyuta. No one can ever become the Supreme Personality of Godhead. One can aspire, though, to be situated on the level of Achyuta by devotional service and become his pure devotee. That is as much as anyone can try and achieve. Right? Even the devatas are not actually going to become God by any means. So Indra has stolen this horse, and like we were discussing, this horse is essential for the rest of the sacrifice to proceed. Right? The horse has to complete its wanderings, and then it has to be sacrificed. So Srila Prabhupada comments that it's also important for us to note that even though we're calling it a horse sacrifice, this animal, when its body is taken away through the sacrifice, it has to be given another body in exchange. And this is a point that is emphasized over and over, so that this verse isn't used to justify sacrificing other animals, right? Particularly because no one in this age has the ability to give life to something when they take away that life. The Brahmanas were extremely powerful, and they had that ability to do so, to actually restore or to give a body to this animal when that animal was killed in sacrifice. So Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he explains this point to Chankazi, who is the magistrate of Navadvip, the town where Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu appeared. The Lord explains this. This is in Chaitanya Charitamrita and Adi Leela, chapter 17, text 160. Jiyate pare yadi tabe mare prani veda purane ache hena agyavani. In the Vedas and Puranas, there are injunctions declaring that if one can revive a living being, one can kill it for experimental purposes. So I like how the Lord puts it, experimental purposes. So the yagyas are sort of like that. They're testing the mantra, as Prabhupada says. So if the mantra has been recited properly, there's so many criteria that must be met before that mantra is recited properly. The Brahmana has to be qualified by birth. Vedic mantras have to be recited by Brahmanas who are both birth Brahmanas as well as qualified Brahmanas, and their qualifications include that they have to be expert in Sanskrit grammar, the intonation, the meter, the rhyme, everything has to actually be perfect in order for these mantras to be recited, so that an animal will be able to achieve another life in exchange. So Lord Chaitanya is emphasizing that you have no right to kill anything that you can't give life to. Certainly these yagyas are supposed to increase the fame and create auspiciousness for the king, for his kingdom, and so on. So certainly there can't be any sins involved. Right? Taking a life is a sin, even if by modern standards, we consider the life of an animal less. But in the eyes of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, that's not so. Specifically because this animal is an innocent, right? Killing is allowed for Kshatriyas, for rulers, but only on the battlefield, or at least in preparation for the battlefield, right? Like the kings are allowed to kill tigers or other predators when they're hunting, so that their skills for fighting are sharpened. It's not like in modern day warfare where the ones going into battle are the soldiers, like they're on the front line. In the previous ages, the kings were on the front line. Their family members were on the front line. So they had to be prepared for battle. So they fought, or they battled wild animals. They were allowed to do that. But they weren't actually allowed to kill animals in sacrifices. The Brahmanas had to exchange by giving a life. So Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is explaining to the Qazi, because the Qazi has challenged the Lord that, in your practices, this animal sacrifice is mentioned. So Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu also quotes another very important verse from the Brihad Naradiya Purana. Brahma Vaivarta Purana. So in the Brahma Vaivarta Purana, there's a very interesting verse that says that in this age of Kali, I'll just look for the Sanskrit, but in this age of Kali, there's 5 things that are prohibited. One is horse sacrifices. The other is cow sacrifices. The third is taking sannyas. The fourth is having a child with your brother's wife. And the fifth is offering oblations of flesh to the ancestors. There's 5 things. So Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu quotes this to the Chand Qazi to explain the conditions of sacrifice. So these points may be a little difficult to accept in this age when these sacrifices are still going on. But we have to remember that Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita that the sacrifices were set forth by him, right, by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, for the satisfaction of Vishnu, Yagyapati. And Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is that same Vishnu. So even though the system of sacrifices was laid down by him in the beginning of time, he has the right and ability to change it now. He has the ability to say that these sacrifices are not meant to be performed in this age. So for those who might challenge Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's authority, he is actually mentioned in the Vishnu Sahasranam. It's a very famous 1,000 names of Lord Vishnu, which glorify the Lord. All the names of the Lord are glorifications of the Lord based on his characteristics, his pastimes, his wonderful qualities. So Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is actually referenced in this verse, in some verses there. And it's interesting because this Vishnu Sahasranam is very well known throughout what we call Hinduism, Sanatana Dharma. But even though it's been chanted so many times, not many people know that Lord Chaitanya is actually mentioned there. So there's 2 verses in particular that speak about the Lord. Suvarna Varna Hemango Varangas Charanangadi. Varangas Charanangadi. Suvarna Varna, he has a golden complexion. Vishnu doesn't have a golden complexion. Everyone knows that he's bluish black. So when does he display a golden complexion? Hemanga, he has the appearance of molten gold. Varanga, he is exquisitely beautiful. Chandanangadi, the Lord's Chandanangadi. The Lord's body is smeared with sandalwood pulp. So we remember in Srimad Bhagavatam, Gargamuni explains to to Nanda Maharaj that your son appears in 4 ages, but in the 4th age he's covered. He appears in a red color in the first stage, Satya Yuga, and he appears in a white color in the first stage in Satya Yuga. In the 2nd age he appears in a red color. In the 3rd age he's bluish black, Krishna. But in the 4th age he's golden, but we could say his disguise is really good. And that's why, even though, like we said, these verses are chanted, so many references are there in scripture, right, from the Vedas and the Upanishads and numerous in the Puranas, Lord Chaitanya is just not well known as Lord Vishnu. Right? The entries on the internet in Wiki and so on will speak of him as a mystic or a saint, not the Supreme Personality of Godhead, not as Vishnu. So this verse is speaking about his bodily characteristics. The other verse in the Vishnu Sahasranam that speaks about his activities, Sannyasa Kshamaha Santa Nishta Shanti Parayanaha. So we can already tell what this verse is about. Sannyasa Krit. He accepts the renounced order of life. When does Lord Vishnu take sannyas? When does Krishna or Ram take sannyas? As Lord Chaitanya, the Lord takes sannyas. And this is also an important point that we'll get to now. But also it said here, Sama, Santa, Nishta, Shanti Parayana, these are qualities of a Brahmana. The Lord appears as, when he appears Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he's a Brahmana. So he has the quality, Sama, he is fully sense-controlled. Santa, he's completely peaceful. Nishta, he's rigidly fixed in the chanting of the holy names of Krishna. And Shanti Parayana, he is the highest abode of devotion and peace. Another meaning of it, he silences the impersonalists, brings peace to the world by silencing the Advaita philosophy. So it's very clear that Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is Vishnu. So we can accept when he tells us that animal sacrifices should not be performed. He is the authority on what should be performed. And we know that he came to give us another system of yajna. It's not that he forbade the system of these sacrificial yajnas and then didn't offer anything for one to be engaged in return. Because we said that Krishna says that acts of sacrifice, charity and penance mustn't be given up. So he gives us a Sankirtan yajna. So one point that we could comment on before we end is, we may have noticed that the verse we quoted from the Purana about the 5 things that should not be performed in this age, one of them is taking sannyas. And yet we've just said that Lord Chaitanya was a sannyasi. And the Supreme Personality of Godhead appeared as a sannyasi in Kali Yuga. So how do we understand this? So we have some nice commentaries by very senior devotees. So as Bhakti Rasamrita Swami shed some light on this. So when the widespread killing of animals was going on in the name of these sacrifices, right, when people were not able to give life to the animal again, but they were still sacrificing so that they could actually have a way to eat meat, eat flesh. This was causing so much of pain and trauma to the animals that the Lord had to actually take an incarnation, a Buddha, to stop this widespread killing in the name of sacrifice. And when he did that, like we said, these are Vedic sacrifices, so he had to basically stop people from believing in the Vedas, for them to stop these sacrifices. And that worked, but his philosophy, which Prabhupada says is actually atheism, because the goal of the Vedas is Krishna, so to deny the Vedas, to deny Krishna, is to be atheistic. This form of atheism, Buddhism, was quite widespread. It became very popular. And what was needed was a philosophy to sort of bring people back to the Vedas again. So a philosophy that was like Buddhism, not too far, so that people would have faith in it, but that would also be based on the Vedas. So the Vedas would be reintroduced. So the personality who appeared empowered to do that was Shankaracharya. And Shankaracharya performed his mission by taking sannyas. That was, we could say, the most effective way to get a mission accomplished, to get the message spread. Sannyasis are respected, and a sannyasi who travels and preaches is going to be able to take his message very far and wide. So for Shankaracharya to do that, he actually took sannyas at the age of 5 years old. He got an early start on his mission. And that, of course, ensured, like it took months to get from one place to the other. That ensured that he wasn't on this planet for very long. I think he passed away in his 30s or 40s, if I'm not mistaken. But he traveled very extensively, right? Because in the sannyasa ashram, one can do that. Right? One is meant to be an itinerant preacher. And because of this, you could say this license he had in his taking of sannyas, he was able to spread his form of his teachings, Advaita or impersonalist philosophy, all throughout the subcontinent, and he drove out Buddhism basically. So his mission was accomplished, and the problem was, of course, that impersonalism is not it's not the goal. It's not the way to achieve the goal of life, Krishna. So now it's required for bhakti to actually replace impersonalism, the next layer of understanding onto people. That although there is this impersonalist interpretation of the Vedas, but actual goal of the Vedas is personalism, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and devotion to Him. So 4 very powerful teachers in particular appeared in 4 different sampradayas, or lines of instruction, disciplic succession, from Krishna, in order to spread bhakti, and now to drive out impersonalism. So what more effective way could they take but the same that Shankaracharya did, and take sannyas so they could travel and spread this message? So even though it was forbidden in Kali Yuga, all these teachers actually became traveling preachers. So we're speaking about Vishnu Swami, Nimbakacharya, Ramanujacharya in particular, Madhvacharya, also very powerful preacher. And so they were instrumental in spreading bhakti throughout India. And then, of course, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu appeared, and he followed their example, and he did the same. So what was the practice up to that point was that besides these acharyas, is that Vaishnavas became Babajis. Babajis are also renunciants, but they perform their bhajan in a solitary place or in one place, and they don't really travel and preach. So Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu actually had to take sannyas from a Mayavad, from an impersonalist, because that school was offering sannyas. And Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu wanted to take sannyas for the purposes of spreading the holy name now, on the foundation of the teachings that the other 4 acharyas of bhakti had established. So Bhakti Rasamrita Swami was explaining that these 5 acts that are forbidden, when they're carried out in the context of karma kanda, when they're carried out in the context of attaining some material results, right? And even sannyasis is actually, it's possible to want to attain material results, or let's say results that are not in devotional service, because these Mayavad sannyasis they're trying to attain oneness with God. They're not trying to attain devotion to Him. And so that oneness, it is materially motivated. Right? It's not pure, it's not transcendental. So in that case, in the case that these 5 acts are being carried out for material benefits, material prosperity and so on, we shouldn't perform them. So from the perspective of a Mayavad sannyasi, one should not take sannyas. But if one is performing, particularly this act of sannyas, because all of the others can't be performed in devotional service, they've not been recommended by the Lord. But particularly sannyas, the Lord set the example because he was engaging in, he was taking sannyas for a transcendental purpose, to spread the holy names. And so in that line, we have Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, who also took sannyas, and he created an army of sannyasis, a very famous attribute of his. And Srila Prabhupada did as well. And Srila Prabhupada also made many sannyas disciples. And we see how successful all of them were. Right? The purposes were achieved. Lord Chaitanya spread the holy name throughout India. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur revived the teachings of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and established them as well throughout India. And through his sannyas disciples today, still those teachings are being propagated in different areas. Srila Prabhupada took sannyas through Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur guided him in a dream to do so. And when he took sannyas, he took the message across the world. He wouldn't have been able to do that otherwise. He wouldn't have had the respect and the renown otherwise to do that. And his disciples who have taken sannyas have been doing the same, spreading the teachings throughout the world as well. So we understand, though, that the vows of sannyas are difficult. So rather, it's necessary for those who are specially empowered in order to be able to do this. And for everyone else, Krishna explains in the 5th chapter of Bhagavad Gita that when we become renounced from the fruits of our activities, then that's sannyas for us, who are still situated in the household ashram, for example, where we can't become itinerant preachers. So it's not exactly required that one should enter the order of sannyas to become renounced. We can all become renounced in whichever station of life we're in, as long as we dedicate everything to the practice of devotional service, we dedicate everything to Krishna. But for those who do feel the calling for sannyas, that's actually it's actually allowed as long as one is engaged fully in devotional service. So if anyone wants to question whether these animal sacrifices could be done in devotional service, the answer is no. And Lord Chaitanya has clearly said that the yagya, the Vishnu of this age has clearly said that the yagya procedure is the Sankirtan yagya. Sankirtana praya yajanti sumedasaha. This is the way that we will please him. This is how we will please the Vishnu of this age. This is how we will worship him. And so this is what Srila Prabhupada is guiding us to understand. That if we engage in this Sankirtan yagya, we'll actually get the benefits of performing all these great yagyas without the effort that we actually are not able to make, that we physically are not able to make in Kali Yuga. So thank you so much for your kind attention. Srila Prabhupada ki. Any questions, comments, Prabhupada? Mike? Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you for the class. I was just thinking of sannyas ashram and you know, some take kshetra sannyas also and stay one place.
Yes.
And some people travel. And Prabhupada says like one person like to taste the sweet balls himself, but the ones who travel, they like to distribute the sweet balls. So distributing Krishna consciousness, so when you distribute it, you get more. You get more. Then the other point you're making about Ravan, and when Lord Ram performed the sacrifice, because he killed Ravan, who was a Brahmana. But Ram, just to teach the common people that's what you meant to do. But Lord Ram was prepared to forgive him at any point in time. If he came at any time for forgiveness, he would have just forgiven him. No, that's an ideal king, you know. Then the other point, there was quite a nice, some very very nice point on the Vishnu Sahasranam. I was looking at it a few days ago. And Baladev Vidyabhusan gives a whole Mangalacharan on it, and I had to prepare some talks to send to the ministry, Sannyas ministry, and I was quoting that from the Vishnu Sahasranam. It's quite interesting that you mentioned that. So thank you very much. Krishna.
Thank you so much, Prabhu. Any other questions, comments? Thank you all so much. Hare Krishna.